As I'm sure many of you are aware, if not all of you, the high cost of housing in Flagstaff, both ownership and rental, has been a challenge in our community for decades. And because we're going to use the term affordability several times, I'm going to define it for you. And the generally accepted definition of affordability nationwide is for a household, any household, to spend no more than 30% of their gross annual income on housing expenses. It doesn't talk about who, it doesn't talk about anything other than 30% of gross annual income. So in referring this question to the ballot, City Council is asking voters if they want the city to address long-term housing affordability in our community in this manner. So the question being considered is to address the high cost of housing in our community, shall the city of Flagstaff be authorized to issue and sell up to $25 million in general obligation bonds? On the next slide, for the purpose of increasing the number of housing units affordable for more residents in the city by construction, rehabilitation, redevelopment, and acquisition of land for housing units and related infrastructure, and for the purpose of, next slide, there we go, for the purpose of assisting more Flagstaff residents to afford housing by making loans and grants for the construction, rehabilitation, redevelopment, and acquisition of housing units and related infrastructure. So on the next slide, voters are presented with a question of whether or not to authorize City Council to issue and sell $25 million in general obligation bonds to be repaid with secondary property taxes. Most difficult. All right, so what this slide says is in 2015 data, which was published in 2016 by the Arizona Department of Housing, and it's the most recently available data from the Arizona Department of Housing, even though we called and asked for updated data, they haven't published it. What it outlines is housing attainability throughout Arizona by profession. And so in 2015, our median home price in Flagstaff was $299,300. That's this one. So the hourly wage required to buy in our community was $34.43. And then there's the associated median salaries of professions across. Police officer at $25.22, teacher at $20.81, retail at $9.54, nurse $31.38, and on across, with an average of all of them being at $15.19. Now in 2015, the median home price was $299,300, and what we know is that by the end of 2016, our median home price had gone up to $350,000 within our community. So on the next slide is similar information but for rent. So in 2015, to rent a 2-bedroom apartment was $1,033, with the hourly wage required to afford that rent at $19.87. Not the year, the dollar amount. And then the associated incomes again across the front. So while the median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in 2015 was $1,033, a study published by Housing Solutions of Northern Arizona in the spring of this year, 2018, determined that the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in our community is $1,441 per month. So what happens on the next slide if 422 passes? Well, the very first step would be for City Council to establish a housing bond committee. And it's anticipated that this housing bond committee would be comprised of a variety of community members representing different interests and different areas of housing and housing market knowledge, such as a realtor, a mortgage lender, a builder, low and moderate income community members, etc. And while the committee will advise City Council, the ultimate responsibility for any funds spent under 422 lies with the City Council. So if 422 passes, funds would be available to assist private developers and builders, including nonprofits, with building new homes and apartments to lower the cost of ownership and rent, and to assist people with buying their first home in Flagstaff with down payment assistance. 422 is designed specifically to provide flexibility to respond to changing markets in the housing and mortgage markets. So a program or approach that is effective at one point in time with one set of market conditions may be less effective as market conditions change. So property owners in the city of Flagstaff pay a dedicated property tax specifically to pay off general obligation bonds, and this is referred to as a secondary property tax. So for many years, the city council has managed to maintain a consistent secondary property tax rate by waiting until older prior bonds are fully paid off before issuing new ones. And the city plan is to do the same thing here and not issue new housing affordability bonds until old bonds are paid off. Therefore, the secondary property tax rate will remain 0.8366 per $100. This is an older one. The new one says per $100 of net assessed value, which property owners already pay. So the rate will be the same as property owners are already paying.